Please submit to stay on your time then. Thank you.
One more minute. Just about everybody's here. There's Mitchell. He won't know. All right, I think that's just about it, everybody. Thanks for being here. And if there might be one or two of you have a third bell obligation, just like pop that in the chat on your way out, and I kind of know what's going on. You don't have to talk or anything. As far as overall, I put your actual grades in Google Classroom in progress book, just did it as I went, and pretty good job on the study guide for the most part, and most people looking real good on those readers logs too. There were a few of you who are only doing like 2-3 sentences, and that we definitely want to see more than that. 4, 5, 6 sentences, more of a full paragraph. Want to practice being able to write about Hamlet. Now, it's kind of a weird dynamic here, because obviously we're reading this to be able to eventually work toward doing that full essay on a major work that you're not really going to be expected to quote, although you probably could with Hamlet by the time we finish it, because so many memorable lines. So this isn't the same thing, right? Because these readers logs are isolating a passage, and you're not writing about something that you've read the entirety of, right? So it's still good practice for the prose, right? And in general, it's just going to make you think more deeply and understand and remember, especially things like characterization and structure and things like that as we go, and just have more thorough knowledge of it. So we do write about the whole thing, which will be a little bit of a different experience. You'll be ready to do it. So let's dive right in. So I'm not going to try to flash back and forth between, I do have a text of Hamlet that I can use like an Amazon ebook, but I'll hold off on using that until at least the meanings questions, and definitely with some readers logs. And then we do the readers logs. You can kind of, since it's hard for me to look at everybody, I'm up to like 2 screens here. You can pop in a chat. I can share one, and then we'll have like a running queue of people who want to share one. And with that, and you want to keep in mind, you want to share 3 of these eventually by the time we finish the play. So you don't absolutely have to share one today, or you can share 2 today if you want. Let me take a look at the chat right now. I got like things going on here. Okay. Oh, everybody's just greeting each other. There's a lot of hugging going on in the chat, if you didn't realize that. Okay. That's great to see. And I love all of you guys too. All right. So, who can describe the political situation in Denmark as it is revealed between Horatio and the guard in scene 1? It's important that we understand everything that's going on here. So it kind of starts out with them talking about like what's up with all the preparation for war going on 24/7 around the castle anyway. Like they talk about the ghost, and they're like, what's up with all the war preparation? So, and don't worry about chatting your way into this. Just say I can and speak. Okay. has to do with Norway, right?
Well, among other things, we got Fortinbras, or however you pronounce his name,
That's right.
trying to regain the lands that his father lost.
hmm
And then there's also the fact, so they have all of the, okay, so that is why they have all the guards set up.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the fact that the king recently died, like the elder Hamlet recently died.
Right. And that could make them vulnerable, right? Might
Yeah.
be unstable.
And that could be especially with what's revealed later.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add to that, anybody? What about what Fortinbras, what is young Fortinbras up to in general in reference to avenging his own father's death, which happened in battle, apparently, to Denmark, obviously. Is he have? Go ahead, Bobby.
He's getting mercenaries to hopefully fight Norway.
Yeah, so he's gone rogue. Young Fortinbras has gone rogue with his own army of mercenaries. So he's, Mr. Badass out there. I'm going to do it myself. I don't care what the king says. And it's his uncle in charge there too, right? So we have this kind of parallel situation going on where we have a son who is grieving a father who was the king, who is dead, and the uncle is now in charge. Okay, so obviously that's set up as a parallel situation, by Shakespeare, but we want to keep an eye out for how attitudes and roles might be kind of different, and then what that reveals ultimately about characterization about people like Hamlet, right? Okay, second one. So what are the two delicate issues? So Claudius kind of gives a kind of State of the Union speech is basically what that is right there. So when we hear the court, that's not a court of law, right? In times of yore, when we had a king, the court was basically all the important people, and it might be like anywhere from like 20 or 30 to like 100 people, all the important dukes and earls and whatever each country called them and things like that. So he's addressing the society of Denmark. So it's two things, right, that he has to reassure his people about. What are they? It's on page 7 of your book if you want to kind of look through as we go. Obviously, one of them is what we
Well,
just
it's
talked
essentially what I said earlier with
Right.
One of them is Fortinbras gathering a makeshift army trying to get the lands back.
Right.
And the other one is the recent death of the king and how they... Is it?
Well, it is.
I
It is
got
the
it.
recent death of the king, but there's something that happened as a resultant of that pretty soon after.
It's,
Oh,
it's that he's announcing his marriage to Gertrude.
Yeah, and not so much announcing. I mean, there was a wedding apparently, right, and everybody was there, but he's wanting to reassure everyone. So he says, "Therefore, our sometime sister, now our queen, the imperial joiners to this warlike state, have weaved for with a defeated," he lists all these oxymorons, right? This with a defeated joy, with an auspicious and a dropping eye, with mirth and funeral and dirge and marriage, equal scale wing, delight and dole. Dole means like grieving, taken to wife. So he's saying that it's basically, in a nutshell, bittersweet, right? Claudius takes forever to say anything because he thinks he's really smart and he talks for a really long time. But basically what he's saying, and notice how he's saying we, right? That royal we, like he's not saying I, because not have we here embarred your better wisdoms, which have freely gone with this affair along. He doesn't mean affair as an affair, although we don't know. But he's whether or not everybody went freely with it along, he's insisting that they have. And then everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, everything's good, right? It's kind of sneaky talk the way he's doing that, right? The way he's making everything seem okay, and everybody's said that it's okay. Is it okay with everybody? Well, we don't really know, right? But he's insisting that it is. Okay, next question. Would the king rather have Hamlet stay at Elsinore, that's the castle, if you didn't put it together, or return to Wittenberg, which is the university where he was going to, whatever graduate school or whatever in France?
He would like.
Sophia, go ahead.
He wants him to stay, not go to Wittenberg, and then he tells Hamlet, like, you're the next guy in throne, like you're the next in line, and then he's just gonna benefit the castle for him to just stay,
Yeah.
and then
What's-
he does.
What's kind of strange about Claudius cheerfully pointing out that Hamlet is next in line for the throne? Like it's like he's supposed to be really happy about that.
It's kind of weird because Claudius just got to throne. It's like, do you really want to give up your power that easily? Like, you just literally just pretty much. I mean, later on, you find out that he murders like the old
If it
Hamlet.
wants
So it's like
breakfast, go ahead. Go ahead.
he just murdered this guy, and you're like, oh, you're next in line. Like, you better be ready. It's like
Yeah,
wait,
especially with
what?
what we know. We don't quite know that here, but we do certainly find that in Act One. Yeah, and you look back at this, there's a lot of things where, when we have the dramatic irony, we have the knowledge of what he's done, we look back and now we see that these things that he says are despicable, right? They might seem a little shifty when he says them, but they're despicable when we find out what really happens, right? Well, plus what usually happens, I don't fully know how the line of succession would work in Denmark centuries and centuries ago, but traditionally what would happen when the king passes on? Who gets the throne usually?
The
I
son
thought it
would.
would be the son.
Yeah, it's usually the son, right? So we're kind of a gray area there. And you'll see that Hamlet does say a couple times, that he feels like it was kind of stolen, away from him. So, kind of a strange thing for Claudius to say there too. Okay. But in retrospect, maybe he wants, maybe he's trying to make sure his tracks are covered and he wants to keep an eye on Hamlet too. He wants to know if he's, thinking about anything. Obvious, mysteriously writing something on a whiteboard over there. I don't know what it is. All right, next question. Keep it moving here. Where's Laertes going? Obviously, he's going back to college like Hamlet is, but we kind of get an inside look at both when Laertes has a conversation with Ophelia and then when Polonius has a conversation with Ophelia. But then also first, we have Polonius talking to Laertes. Now, he goes on and on for a long time, too. He's a real talker, isn't he? Shakespeare doesn't just do this because he writes at length. He does it to show people talking at length for good or bad reasons. What do we think of Polonius? There's a lot of famous lines in there, whether you recognize them or not. Do this, don't do that. Do this, don't do that. A lot of advice. What can we take from that? Anything? Do you have any impression?
I honestly think like the relationship between Polonius and his son is kind of like he's trying to make him so it's like Laertes is not like bringing like a bad reputation or name to like the family, because he's all trying to be like, you need to do this, not do that. But it's like, but ultimately you must be yourself. But then it's like, okay, he's trying to live up to the expectations that his father set. And it's like, okay, I have to do everything right or else something's gonna happen.
But just be yourself, right? It's kind of silly to say, but just be yourself after you've told him how to live his life in every single way possible, right? That's exactly what I was looking for, actually. And so it's not a give and take, right? They're not talking back and forth and having this like productive, loving, caring conversation, right? And then that gets intensified even more with the way he talks to Ophelia, right? He's telling his kids what to do, like left and right. And what does he really care about? That's a question we want to answer too. I guess I didn't have a question about Ophelia here. It's probably in the discussion questions, but maybe kind of circle back to what is Polonius really concerned with? Well, here we go. How does Ophelia tell Ophelia to behave towards Hamlet? What are his reasons for this? How does this characterize their relationship? I did have that in the next question, so we're going to want to address that. Number 5. Uh-oh, we have an awkward silence.
He says, okay, hold on, I was trying to myself. Okay, he tells Polonius tells Ophelia because he's saying that Hamlet has too much, he's young, so he can do what he wants, any male, and as a power.
Your audio is going in and out, Bobby. I'm not sure why.
Okay, can you hear me better?
I think so.
Okay, so he's telling Ophelia that Hamlet isn't to be trusted and his vows are just baloney because he's young and male, so he can get away with it. You be careful because you're,
That's part of it. And Laertes stresses that too, right? They also stress that Hamlet's that his priority and his energies aren't going to be dedicated toward her, but they're going to be for what? His role as
king or prince or
right. Yeah, the state, right? Now there may be some truth to that, but does it really make sense for them, especially Polonius, to not want Ophelia to be courted? And she says that he's been totally respectful and everything, right? Does it really make sense for them to have so much objection to being courted by the crown prince? You'd think that would be a good thing. I mean, they're a respectable family. They're members of the court too. So for them to be
at this point, it feels like there's an ulterior motive here.
Yeah, which makes us wonder.
Like maybe he has somebody else in mind.
Okay. Or if Polonius
who else would be like? I'd assume the crown prince would be give them a lot of power. So I don't know why you would want somebody else. So that theory just kind of fell apart.
Yeah. Also, we do want to wonder too, like as we see Polonius continue to interact with Claudius, and knowing what we know about Claudius, what Claudius did, and that Polonius was probably chancellor when Old Hamlet was there too. We want to keep thinking about who, if anyone, was in on what Claudius did. Did Gertrude know, or was she in on it? Did Polonius know? And do we ever find out? What do we think now? Just keep thinking about those things and pay attention to those people's character, because that might give hints as to what they know or don't know. Okay, so hopefully what you're getting from all this is Polonius, he says, or you'll tender me a fool, reject his tender affections, or you'll tender me a fool. He's always trying to make these little puns, right? He's concerned about his own reputation more than anything, right? Okay, 6. So Hamlet has a conversation with the ghost. Seems to be his father. They hope it's his father as opposed to something else. What is the official account of old Hamlet's death that the ghost relays that presumably they already knew? And then, of course, what really happened specifically, and how does he express that through a metaphor?
He says that he was stung by a serpent or a snake.
Uh-huh.
And that actually means that he was poisoned by his brother.
Whoever's voice this is not projecting enough to light up your box. Who's talking here?
It's Kate.
Kate. Okay, thank you, Kate. So he said that he was stung by a serpent, and then and he says that serpent now wears the crown, of course, and that's when Hamlet says, "Oh, my prophetic soul, my uncle." What does he mean by that? Oh, my prophetic soul. Like he just yells it spontaneously. Prophetic would mean knowing something, right? What's he basically saying there? He's admitting that he
knew all along that like he had a feeling, but he needed something else to like make sure that he knew what's going on and that it was true.
Which explains Hamlet's first soliloquy, where he sounds so depressed and so dejected and disillusioned and cynical about the whole world, but he's not saying exactly why, other than you can tell he doesn't like Claudius, and then his mother remarried so quickly and things like that. But you could tell there's something a little bit deeper going on there that he was, disgusted with and maybe suspicious of. And so now he knows, or at least he thinks he knows. And he explains it figuratively through, of course, comparing Claudius to a serpent. And of course, that has biblical allusions loaded into it, obviously. Some of you, I think, might have written a reader's log about that, so that's good. And then finally, what task does the father from beyond the grave set for his son Hamlet? What strategy, quote unquote, does Hamlet decide to adopt at once in order to reveal the truth and set things right? Well, obviously, what he tells him is avenge your father's most foul murder, right? That's what Hamlet says, murder, and then he explains it, right? But what is the only thing that Hamlet can think to do for now is what? What does he explain to Horatio and Marcellus that he's going to do for now? It's kind of odd and random, isn't it? There's another question about this up in number 12, right? It's referencing the same thing.
I mean, it's kind of smart because, I mean, at the time, it's like, what are you going to do? Just straight up kill him? Like, that's not going to make anything better for now. But you got to make it to where, like...
What's it? What are you talking about?
Okay, so Hamlet, like... he can't like just go and kill Claudius to like come back, because that's just not going to make anything any better right now. But in the meantime, he's going to like act crazy so that Claudius doesn't like think of anything like, oh, he's harmless, like, the throne isn't like going to be in the point where it's like they're going to be fighting over it. He think that he's just going to go along with everything. He's like, okay, like he's no threat, so I'm just going to, not going to worry about him. When in reality, it's like actually something's going to be happening.
That's how he hopes it goes, for sure. Yeah, good job. Antic-disposition. And he makes, he has these weird phrasings where he says, and don't you guys go say, oh, I knew what he was doing, or I heard him, and remember he said this, and all that stuff. He's basically saying to them, hey, don't say any of those things. Don't even talk about this. Don't let anybody know anything you've seen here, and certainly don't let anybody know that I'm pretending to be crazy. Now, when you think about this, actually, I think that's one of our discussion questions. We'll come back to number 12. Okay, I'm going to try, this might be kind of tricky, but I'm going to bring up, let's see. Oops. Give me a sec here. Gather myself. I'm going to try to bring up my Amazon Kindle software onto screen share. That better work. Let's see. There we go. Can you guys see that? Right? Yes? Cool. Okay. So let's go on to 8. And I might or might not bring things up, but I'll definitely do when it comes to the reader's log. So, all right. A little more than kin, less than kind. What is scene 2 in Act 1 reveal about Hamlet's character? His response to seeing his mother. One of my favorite lines in the first act is when he says, "I shall in all my best obey you, madam." You probably italicized there, right? Thoughts on those things? Are you getting those the puns and his attitude and his tone through that? There. Anyone on number 8?
I'll go. Okay.
Thanks, Bailey.
So, I basically just said that he uses a lot of irony. And so, like, the first line where he's talking about, like, the kin and less than kind is where he's, like, acknowledging his relation to the king, but he's like, I actually don't like it. Like, that's really gross and weird and, like, not good at all.
Good, exactly. Kin means family, if you're not getting that. So, in other words, I don't like the fact that you're my stepfather and my uncle at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I said that his response to his mother, like, while still really sarcastic and whatever, is like somewhat more respectful because like it's still his mom. So obviously he's gonna be like, okay, I really don't approve of this, but like you are still my mom, so like I respect you a little bit more than I respect him. So he's basically just like it just shows like even though his like character is like the same throughout, that he like behaves differently towards different people.
Excellent. Couldn't have put it better myself, especially interpreting the lines there. I shall in all my best obey you, madam. I'm disgusted with you, but I don't quite hate you the way I hate this guy. Okay. So yeah, he's bitterly ironic. He's sarcastic. He's harsh, but he's very clever too. That's why a lot of people kind of enjoy and like the character of Hamlet from the beginning. And it's not, maybe not what you expect from a grand tragic hero first, right? He just seems like a really frustrated, sarcastic, but intelligent person. All right. So we got 3 father and son relationships here. We got a comment on number 9.
I'll go again. So, I mean, okay. So, what kind of is happening is, I think.
Pause. Who's speaking there?
Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley. Go ahead.
Okay, so, like Hamlet and what's the prince of
Fortinbras?
Yeah, him. They kind of have like we kind of talked this before. We have like the parallel. They're like paralleling each other because they're having the same thing going on pretty much. So they're both not technically, they should be in line for the throne, but they're not, like, because their uncles are pretty much running the whole show, and they're just kind of, I think they're both frustrated. So you have that going on, and I think Hamlet is, but you see that now with, he had a good relationship with his father, and he tells that saying that he was good to his mother and that he was like a good king. So like, why is it that he died? Like, why? And so I think that's where he gets the frustration from. But then
can we contrast them at all? Those two also. You're right with the parallels. Can we contrast them? Like, is there any subtle differences in the way that they seem to be reacting and planning to deal with this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Hamlet is like not going to be like, oh, I'm going right into war, where he is like, he's just kind of like taking like, okay, I'm just gonna play this off, see how it goes, and see like, let's dig deeper, what's going on. Like, let's beef this up.
And it's like, well, maybe I'll try acting crazy for a while. This is kind of scary. I can't really do much. And Fortinbras is like, I'm gonna go kick some people's asses, or I'm just gonna walk right out and do whatever I want. I don't care what my uncle says. I'm gonna go avenge my father right now. Okay, and then obviously, just to kind of finish that one off, Laertes seems to have less of a connection. So he contrasts them in that he's just seems to be, instead of having this huge respect for his father, he's more just kind of obeying him, right? So that's kind of a, you might say, a foil to these other two that are close yet still have their subtle differences. All right, on to 10. How do you suppose Ophelia feels after listening to her father and brother talk about her love life? How would you feel? Sounds great, huh? I mean, they get right down to talking about what with her? Nobody's gonna say anything.
I'll go. Like, they just like strike the heart of the matter and basically address everything about the relationship, and they make her feel like it's invalid and that she's like just naive and doesn't know what she's doing, even though they really have no right to be like interfering with their relationship when in reality there's like nothing glaringly wrong with it. They're just kind of like on their own. They have ulterior motives for breaking it up, and Ophelia's just kind of has to sit there and take it, even though it's like not fair to her.
Yeah, and she doesn't, there's nothing that really seems to indicate that Ophelia's not intelligent, not thoughtful. We don't even know the extent of the relationship. We haven't seen she and Hamlet talking with each other, right? But it seems like they're kind of piling on, and it seems really intrusive, and they're, you know, right down to actually talking about, you know, her sex life, and they might have some legitimate concerns about her reputation if she, say, like slept with Hamlet and then they weren't married. That could be legitimate because, unfortunately, you know, that's how things were. It still might be to a degree, right? But especially then. But yeah, it's sucks to be Ophelia. All right, 11. Famous line: "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark." I believe it's Marcellus that says that. We know what's rotten in the state of Denmark now. What's rotten in the state of Denmark is that the current king assassinated his own brother, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. But what other potential situations is that causing between people that would make it an apt metaphor to say that Denmark is like rotting? Like, if you fan out, what are all the different potential horrible things going on because of what the king did regarding all these characters?
I can go again.
Okay.
Like, number one, he's putting all of his like the people, like the soldiers and stuff, in danger because like the stability of the kingdom is in jeopardy. And he's like kind of a homewrecker because, well, kind of, because of the like implications of his relationship with Hamlet's mom and like what was going on. So it's kind of like, because the kingdom is impure at like in the internal affairs, it's gonna like come and corrupt other things that like affect more people than just Hamlet, Gertrude, and Claudius.
Good. And we got to keep asking ourselves, who knows and who doesn't, right? And so everyone, anyone who knows what happened is going to be wondering who knows what. And there's nothing like dishonesty and corruption, like you said, that can kind of destabilize the society even further. So how far is this going to go depends on what Hamlet does. How desperate is the king to keep a secret, and who else knows? All right, last page. What does Hamlet mean by putting on an antic disposition? So we already talked about that, but to kind of extend on that, how might Hamlet's behavior, if you think in terms of like putting on this play, you know, like an actual live play, where you're actually watching it, how might Hamlet's behavior create two different levels of acting? This is why it's a really complicated part to play, because Hamlet's under a lot of stress, right? So whether or not he is acting crazy, what else could be at play here?
You have to, well, the actor playing Hamlet has to also act within that role. So that's, I'm assuming, the two levels that it's talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. And then you have to consider, like, with the stress that he's under and how sad he already is, you know, could there be...
And it also creates a sort of dramatic irony because we know what's happening and very few other people in the story, if any, do.
Right. And good. And then I'm glad you think about dramatic irony, because there's tons of it in every Shakespeare play, especially tragedies has a ton of it. But also you might question at some point, is Hamlet, you know, I mean, if you were Hamlet, you probably would be losing your mind in this situation to some degree. You'd certainly be under a lot of duress, right? So yeah, really complicated. All right, comparing Hamlet's two soliloquies. What do they reveal about his changes in nature? Why does he talk to himself in the I mean, he talks to himself in the first place because it's a non-realistic convention. He's the tragic hero. We want to see what's going on inside his head and his heart, right? And that itself creates a lot of dramatic irony, right? Do you see any difference between how he sounded in his "oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt and resolve itself into a dew," that whole thing, and then the second one, which is after he talks to the ghost?
In the second soliloquy, he's more frustrated and angry. He wants to get his revenge. He's kind of psychotic almost. It sounds like reading the same things over and over again. And then, but now he's actually just driven. He has like a focus. Beforehand, the first soliloquy, he was sort of depressed. He didn't have a point of view. He's like, I don't know what to do with my life. You know, his dad just died. His mom married his uncle, who's kind of all over the place. But now he has a goal. I mean, the goal might be to kill somebody, but now he has a focus. But he's still kind of he's delusional.
Good. Yeah. At first, he's frustrated and confused and depressed, and of course, he was wondering if that happened. And then the second one, of course, he's angry. Basic differences. And then you have to think to yourself, you know, like project yourself forward in the story. Is this story? How could this end in any kind of way that would be like productive or positively meaningful, right? Because if he gets Claudius and he avenges his father's death, like, is that great and happy and fulfilling, right? It would be more just like, God, that's a really messed up thing that happened, and I guess I can understand him doing that. But surely Shakespeare's not going to write this play where, you know, Hamlet eventually gets Claudius, kills him. We're all like, yeah, that was an awesome ending, right? And what would that mean? So where is this all going to go? You know, we don't know. All right, last question, then let's switch over to reader's logs. We do have enough time, so that's good. What do we think about Hamlet's approaches to his problems? Are there actions he could take? Does he seem like what we call a tragic hero? Any thoughts on that before we move on to reader's logs?
Yeah. So I said that it seems like he really just like complains and like just overthinks about everything. Like he doesn't even do anything about what he's mad about. Like he just keeps it to himself. He's like really pissed off about the whole like king and his mom situation. He's like, you know what? I'll just like keep that to myself, really. I'll just be a little sarcastic, but otherwise I'm not gonna tell anyone about my problems. Yeah. And so I feel like that just like makes them worse, like amplifies them, which is why he's so depressed and frustrated and like mad, because it's just like amplifying his own problems. And then I said like instead of him going straight to the source, like with the king and his mom, he has these like long-winded soliloquies where he's just thinking to himself and like, you know, like it's fine. And so like I didn't really get the whole hero aspect yet, because he's like not really trying to do much except for at the end where he's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill him, but like he doesn't really seem all too gung-ho about it.
No, not yet. He seems confused and depressed and angry, but yeah, he hasn't like formulated a plan and or anything like that. So yeah, in a lot of ways he doesn't seem that way. Now another way we can think about that is as far as what kind of tragic hero he is and how Shakespeare's putting that together, does it seem like he is does it feel like there's some fate at work that's closing in on him, like it did with Romeo and Juliet or with Macbeth, right? With Macbeth, it just kind of seemed like no matter what he did, he kept like doing stupid stuff and he was going to come to a tragic end. Do we have any, you know, I don't think we have too much sense of that one way or the other yet, but you want to keep thinking about that. Certainly don't think that it certainly doesn't seem like a feeling of fate at work here or anything, right? This is more about the effects of something horrible that someone did that's close to Hamlet. So, and what about tragic flaw, though? I think Bailey might have touched on something that could be kind of a tragic flaw. There's one word in particular that he used. He said overthinking, right? He seems to be kind of overthinking. Now, that being said, you know, realistically, and this is why a lot of people, this is one of the reasons I like Hamlet, he seems like more of a real person to me, because if we found out, you know, if you can really suspend your disbelief and put yourself in Hamlet's shoes and you find out something like that, you know, we'd probably react more like him. We would obsess, right? Would you just like get up and go punch someone in the face? No, you're not that kind of person. You would, you know, if someone did you wrong on a lesser scale, right? Do we always act as much as we would like to? Most of the time, not, right? All right, let's go to reader's logs. Cue yourself up in the chat if you'd like to share a reader's log. I think that would be a good way to do it. I'm going to come off the screen share for a sec. And there's a conversation about the juice pyramid in chat. How funny. Is everyone seeing the juice pyramid? We'll have to take a picture of that and post it on Google Classroom for all the non-cohort people. It's quite impressive. It's epic. Yeah, maybe at the end. Okay, I've got an order here. If you look at the chat, we can just kind of go in order, and I'm going to screen share back to the text. And if, when you share reader's log, Bobby, if you could just give me a few sequential words of the passage you selected, then I can kind of bring it up on the screen here.
Okay, so this one, let me pick one. Let's see. Should I do 1, 2, or 3? Someone pick a number.
Give me words.
Okay, we'll do all hosts of heaven. Oh, this is the second soliloquy. Page 25, 26. Scene. This is the second scene.
You don't have to tell me all that. All I need is words. Hosts of heaven.
All you hosts of heaven.
Got it.
It is. I do. Okay. Yeah, it's the whole thing. Like the whole him speaking to himself. So I wrote
the first soliloquy. Oh no,
yeah,
no, this is the second one.
This is the second one.
Because he says ghost. Okay.
In this soliloquy by Hamlet, he expresses his anger. He found out that his father was betrayed by his uncle, the current king. And we can assume that Claudius killed old Hamlet for the throne, but Hamlet does not want. Well, Hamlet is angry about the throne. He wants to get revenge for the death of his father. This is a turning point for him. Since old Hamlet died and his mother married Claudius, he has been depressed. Hamlet believed that his life was worthless and he was in a very dark place. However, after hearing this information by the ghost, he is very motivated and driven to fulfill his promise to his dead father, the ghost. This will lead Hamlet to change the way he behaves around other people, because now he has a goal he needs to accomplish. And this will help also progress the plot forward as he makes mistakes and overthink.
He even kind of writes down to himself, swearing an oath, right, after he finishes. Talking about his mother and how disgusted he is with her. But was it a kind of significant event? Was that what the skill you're kind of connected to there?
I did explain the function of the character changing or remaining unchanged. I explained how it changed from the first soliloquy to the second.
Right, good. That connects that question we were talking about with the two soliloquies. All right, excellent, good. Whoever was next, go ahead.
Okay, so it starts, my fate cries out.
Got it?
Yeah. Okay, so I did it until like the Still I Am Called. And so it was just about like revealing character. So since Hamlet is pulling against his friends, because he's like saying that every bone in his body is telling him, everything in his body is telling him to go to the ghost of like possibly his father. And so I think that this scene really shows Hamlet's devotion to and love for his father. And it really builds on where early on we see how much he's grieving his father's death, like way more than everybody else. And by going against like his friends who are really close to him, it shows how strongly Hamlet feels about his father, and in turn, I think foreshadows like what he's willing to do for him and in the name of him. So.
Good job. So for all his indecision and overthinking, he does insist on walking off with this ghost, right? Even though his friends are objecting. There's another kind of telling line in there too that tells us something else when he says, I do not set my life at a pin's fee. I don't know if you guys noticed that. So you're right, it is kind of courageous, but we also see that he's not even concerned with his life. So the combination of those two things, his dedication, his love for his father, and his, maybe not even care about what happens to him, enables him to do that. All right, whoever was next.
Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt.
First soliloquy.
Yeah. Am I good?
Yep.
All right. So I did specific textual details that reveal about a character. In this sequence, Hamlet depicts the way he feels about his current position, his father's recent death, and his mother's quick remarriage. Long story short, Hamlet is filled with despair and depression, and he's actually feeling really suicidal. Like, I don't think we talked about it a lot, but like,
no, we haven't.
Yeah, like the way he says he wants his like flesh to melt, and how he wishes God didn't make like self-slaughter a sin.
Good.
So there's that. Referring to his mother's remarriage, he says it is not nor cannot lead to good. And here he is like, it catches the hold on, I'm sorry. It is in this dialogue that the audience catches a hint of foreshadowing, as it is the first time Hamlet mentions the future. Throughout the duration of his speech, Hamlet makes many allusions to historical figures, revealing to the audience that he is a very intelligent man. His first allusion is when he compares the love his late father had for his mother to Hyperion, to Satyr, as a reference to the sun god and his affections. This demonstrates to the audience that Hamlet's heart is breaking not only for the loss of affection to his mother, but also to the fact that she does not seem to care about his father's death. This gives us our first real glimpse into Hamlet's mind and into the specific character structure of our tragic hero.
Yeah, Niobe, Hercules. He's a lot of contrast between what he believes Claudius to be and what he considers father to be. So both, yes, he says almost, it seems to imply that the only thing holding him back from suicide is the fact that it's viewed as such a sin by God, right? So that kind of reflects his desperation. He uses several allusions to contrast his father to his uncle, and you not only you see both simultaneously the disgust that he had, lack of respect he has for his uncle, and the not only admiration. It seems like he worshipped his father, right? Like, yeah, my father's brother, but no more like to my father than I to Hercules. Self-deprecating at the same time, like he often is. Okay, good, excellent. Next one.
Hello, it's Sophia. I was actually going to touch on the comparison with Hercules and Niobe. That was going to be my reader's log, but we kind of already talked about it, so I'll pick a different one.
Oh, okay.
So we
Very
can
flexible of
do,
you.
never to speak of this that you have seen, basically at the end. Swear by my sword.
Swear. Got it.
Okay. So I did the skill of like a dynamic character, like changing over the course of the narrative and like making choices and everything. So like, I think we can kind of see in this part, because if we remember back to the first soliloquy, he's like all sad and depressed, and then like Horatio and his friends come in. He's like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while." Like, oh, and it kind of like he seems a little bit happier, whether it's a show or like his friends are comforting to him.
Mhm.
But then in this part, after he just sees like his father's ghost, and he's like, "Oh my God, you just got murdered and everything." Like when he sees his friends, he's not really like cheered up or anything. He's like, "Don't talk about this at all. Like I'm doing it myself. Like we're gonna avenge him in this, way. Like don't talk about my plans and everything." So it's kind of like a contrast in like how he's changed to like, I think he's a little bit more comforted by the people around him, and now at the end it's like he's taking it all upon himself and he has to figure it out himself to avenge
Nice.
his father.
I agree. There's also something really weird. There's a little bit of ambiguity regarding the reality of the situation when the ghost is saying swear. He's saying, and then Hamlet is telling them, lay your hands upon the sword, swear you've never heard this. What's kind of uncertain there? Whether or not what?
Like whether the ghost is actually saying it, if it's like in his mind.
Yeah, because they don't seem to hear it, do they?
Right.
And the ghost can't be totally imaginary because it was spotted without Hamlet, and they all three see it together now before Hamlet wanders off with it. But now it seems to be, I don't know, maybe it's able to speak in a way that Hamlet hears it and they don't. Or are we supposed to think maybe Hamlet's a little bit crazy? It's really ambiguous, and in a way, it almost kind of doesn't make sense. And a lot of people talk about that, how, I personally don't think that Shakespeare like messed it up to not make sense. If nothing else, he's trying to create some uncertainty there. All right. I'm not looking at the chat, so was someone else next after Sophia?
That would be me.
Yeah.
So I have, it's another part of the second soliloquy.
Mhm.
If that's fine for me to do. It starts with, but howsoever thou pursues this act.
Got it.
I'll pursuest. It has it different in the book, whatever.
That is it, though, right?
Yeah.
Take not thy mind, let thy soul contrive. Okay.
It shows the fact that his father seems to not really have changed even in death, because he wants the queen to still remain. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it's the fact that he's really exclusively angry at his brother, where he wants Claudius specifically to face the punishment for his crimes and he feels that the guilt that Gertrude, I think, right? I forgot her name.
Gertrude, yeah.
Yeah. That she'll feel as a result of that will be punishment enough with
Her conscience will be enough punishment.
Yeah.
And leave her to heaven, as in leave her to the judgment of heaven, and into those thorns that her bosom lodge to prick and sting her. So yeah, that'll be her conscience. Good. So yeah, it kind of speaks to the character of the ghost, and yeah, like you said, suggests that it seems like it is him, and also suggests that maybe he doesn't understand, think, or suspect that Gertrude was in on it, because we might be wondering that. Not that rules it out, but something to think about still. Okay, was someone after Alex? Or was he the last one on the queue for now? Let me come back to the chat here.
I can go next.
Okay.
Okay, so
who's speaking?
Connor.
Okay, good. Connor, give me a line.
The line that I use: a beast that wants discourse of reason.
Okay.
So basically, I did the comparison and how that can reveal perspectives of the character. So in this soliloquy, he describes the anger with his mother for her crass nature towards pain that he feels towards the death of his father. And he is very upset with her that she seems to be over the death of her husband after a little month, and has turned around to marry her brother-in-law. And Hamlet's feelings towards her are compared to an animal that just lost its spouse or whatever, but then it just turns around and doesn't really care about it because it's an animal. So that comparison reveals that he's really bitter towards her mother because towards his mother because she kind of doesn't really care that her husband just died, and doesn't really care about the feelings of Hamlet towards his father.
We do find out the timeline there too. I'm glad we have this passage in front of us right after the part that I've highlighted. Did you guys notice that? Within a month, right? That's a pretty short amount of time, right? Now Claudius might have talked her into it. This Denmark needs to be stable, need to have a king and queen. But yeah, pretty close. And he makes hope I'm not overstepping here. Doesn't he make a bitter joke with how close they were together when he's speaking with Horatio and he's asking him why he's home? Yeah, because I talked about it in the commentary, right? It's one of my favorite lines when he says the funeral baked meats did furnish forth the marriage tables, right? Did anybody notice that line? Did furnish.
Yeah, it's it's implying that they used leftovers from the funeral to feed at the, I don't know. I mean, metaphorically, I don't know if they actually did that, but
I agree that he probably means that figuratively or hyperbolically, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really hilarious. The fact he makes the jokes about the darkest things, right? Like he's making a joke about how they practically could use the leftovers from the funeral for the wedding, right? I mean, who's going to make that joke in his position? But Hamlet's got it. He's going to make a dark joke out of everything. So those are sprinkled all through there. We unfortunately can't talk about all of them, but I enjoy his sarcastic, ironic darkness. Okay. Anybody else? So enough time for one or two more if we want to. These are all great, by the way.
I can share mine.
Okay.
The passage is, what if it tempt you toward the flood?
My Lord.
And it's when Horatia's begging Hamlet not to go with the ghost. Okay. This passage is a desperate warning to Hamlet and shows changes in both Horatio and Hamlet. Horatio changes from a kind listener to a bold and caring friend, and exposes the tendency of Hamlet to make rash or unsafe decisions. Horatio also reveals his own psychological awareness by mentioning the ideas of suicide, death, and insanity, where before Horatio was a largely superficial character, here we see the way that he internally changes in order to help his friend. This demonstrates that while their friendship is good-natured and genuine, They both have weaknesses and fears that define their actions.
Good. Yeah, Horatio was just kind of one of the guys talking about he seemed a little bit more in the know than the guards, but here we see him like really, really being super concerned for his friend that he obviously cares deeply about, right? And if that word flood is kind of misleading there. What if it tempt you toward the flood? I can't remember the exact meaning of that word. It's probably in the notes, but it's basically implying that this could be like a demon, that's going to tempt you into some sort of like purgatory or hell or otherworldly, insane thing, right? Or deprive you of your sovereignty, reason drive you into madness, drive you crazy, and then later do we think that's maybe kind of happened, right? After he talks to him and then he hears the ghost and they don't. All kinds of stuff going on. Last chance, anybody else? Somebody else just popped into a chat. Very glitching. I don't know. Alex. Yeah, I know some people it's doing it, some people aren't. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Or are we all good? All right, guys, that was really excellent. Hope to hear from some more. Let me double check. I have heard readers logs from Connor. Was it Connor just a minute ago?
Yeah, I just went.
Yeah, Sophia, Analu, Bailey, David, Bavia, and Alex. Was there one more? Or was that all the readers logs we heard? Is that it? I'll make sure I count because I'm counting up those 3. All right, I'm sure we'll hear a whole lot more next time, but I'll let you go. We're getting near our time limit. That was really great. I will post up study guide for Act 2. I'm going to ask you to finish Act 2 by Monday night, okay? So maybe think about even doing a little bit of that today. I think we should finish Act 2, review it on Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and then I'll give you a break, okay? And then we'll finish Act 3, sometime after those remote days. And I'll start working up those commentaries because it sounds like everybody's using them. So, okay, thanks, guys.